Witamy. Um, I'm really excited to be, well, virtually with you today because the subject of innovative education is a passion of mine and it is absolutely critical for the situation we're in at the moment. So I think you're going to really enjoy today's online conference. And again, thank you for being here. I'm excited. Enjoy today.
Colin, jak to się w ogóle stało, że zainteresowałeś się przyspieszonym uczeniem się i od kilkudziesięciu lat aż tak się specjalistycznie tym zajmujesz?
Okay, I became interested because and in particularly the application to language, because I found it quite difficult learning another language. And I was lucky enough back quite a long time ago now to have sold a company. I didn't really need to work for a time. And I went to Oxford University and I researched everything I could. I used the libraries, talked to the professors, and I asked them the basic question, how do people learn? Now, interestingly enough, there was an awful lot of focus on how do we teach, but very few people had asked that question, and it seemed to me fundamental. And from that question and from my own difficulty in learning a language, I then honed in on the fact that we do have different learning modalities. It's a little oversimple, but some people are very visual learners. Some people are auditory learners. Very definitely, some people are physical learners. They need more physical input. So I gradually pieced together from memory research and psychological research and Nobel Prize winners, etc. I pieced together it really was a synthesis of a lot of other research, a kind of a guide, a template of how you could get the most people to learn in the most varied ways, because it isn't enough to teach or to learn one way. Really fast learning is multiple modality learning.
Kiedy mówimy o nowoczesnej edukacji, kiedy mówimy o skutecznej edukacji, efektywnej edukacji, no to oczywiście mówimy o czymś, co musi się dać zmierzyć. Jakie rezultaty mierzalne świadczą o tym, że taki właśnie sposób uczenia się, który te wszystkie badania, które studiujesz i studiowałeś, pokazują, że działa najlepiej. Jak możemy się przekonać, że faktycznie taki sposób uczenia się jest skuteczniejszy?
Interesting question, Chris, because going back again, you asked me how I started. I then wrote a book called Accelerated Learning, which to my total surprise sold about 500,000 copies, worldwide, different languages, etc. And then quite reasonably, somebody challenged me, well, okay, Colin, you've got this concept of how to improve the way people learn, but how do you prove that? Now, one of about the only subject that you can take people from zero to a level is languages, is a foreign language. I mean, everybody knows a little bit of mathematics and geography and everything, right? But if I know zero German today or zero Polish today, but in 6 months' time, I'm a relatively, reasonable speaker of German or Polish, then I have proved my point. So in fact, although I am associated with language learning, it was really a challenge. It was somebody said, you prove it to me before I believe you. And in that sense, we started off, and in England, of course, originally, and we had French and German and Spanish for English speakers. And lo and behold, many schools got involved in this, including some really big, very famous schools. And the teachers would take what I designed originally for home study, and they adapted it for the classroom. And yes, because we have exams, and we had one school, for example, where a group of students wanted to learn Spanish. They didn't have a Spanish teacher, right? So these students used the accelerated learning materials that I'd created with an outside tutor, and lo and behold, they actually did as well in 1 year as the other students from schools which did have a Spanish teacher did in 3 years. So it was a really good proof of the concept.
Dużo się mówi ostatnio o rewolucji w edukacji, która jest konieczna, która się dokonuje. Jak edukacja się zmieniła w ciągu ostatnich lat, szczególnie w ciągu ostatnich lat?
Well, an interesting question. And somebody once said to me, Chris, that if you take modern society and took somebody from even the 17th century, but so let's say the 18th or 19th century, and plonk them down, put them down in today's society, they wouldn't believe it, other than the typical classroom. And apart from the interactive whiteboard, etc., it would look pretty much the same. You know, you've got a teacher in the front teaching, talking to the students. It isn't that different. That's the only element of society that's not that different. So we are changing, but the essential nature is that it's driven by the teacher, whereas the truth is, you can facilitate people learning, but you can't make them learn. You know, you can create the situations, the environment where the learning is interesting. It's hopefully even entertaining. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. And you will want to learn. You're motivated to learn. So to that extent, we're beginning to see a change. We're beginning to see the use of, new media, etc. Obviously, the internet is the really big change. But unless we encourage students and empower them and actually equip them with the techniques to learn more on their own, which of course they're now being forced to do because of the current pandemic, then we're really not going to have a breakthrough. So I think it's actually really quite positive that that students are being forced to do more on their own, because when they leave school, there isn't a teacher there any longer. You know, they are going to have to learn on their own. And more than that, they're going to have to learn and relearn because the world is changing so quickly that you're no longer going into a career. You know, I know yourself, you're into at least your third career, successful, I'm happy to say. But none of us are going to sort of have a job for life. You know, we're going to have to learn and relearn all the time because of the way the technology is.
Co może zrobić dzisiaj szkoła, a szczególnie co mogą zrobić rodzice, żeby pomóc tym swoim niesamowicie nowoczesnym dzieciom w nauce?
Good question again. The point is that until fairly recently with education, there's been the kids' world, which is totally multimedia. They're on their phones. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that in principle. And the adults or the parents' world or the older educators' world. And until we enter the children's world, the multimedia world, the exciting world, their world, then we're not going to engage with them or bring them to us, right? We we need to, again, that word facilitate, we need to create an environment where they want to learn, they're happy to learn, they're engaged in the learning, but that's all now the multimedia world which we must engage with, and we must create materials that motivate the kids because it's the way they like to learn. And I also appreciate that for many parents, it is a kind of, the world that your kids are inhabiting is a bit different. So what we've done is create a little ebook, but it's packed with information on how you can best support your children to benefit from the course that we've created, because it really is very, very different. But there's lots of things you can do to support them, and it's all there. So I would advise you strongly and beg you, download that ebook. You will find it fascinating.